Okay, so are you ready to dive into a film? It kind of takes you on, well, a bit of an emotional roller coaster, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
We're going to be looking at Dogfight.
Okay.
It's a film from 1991.
Right.
It was directed by Nancy Savoca.
Yeah.
And it's got this, like, really brutal premise, but somehow it manages to weave this really touching story about, connection and tenderness. And you've got River Phoenix and Lili Taylor giving these amazing performances.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't think that a film
Right.
that's centered around this game, it's called a dogfight,
Right.
where these Marines are competing to bring like the ugliest date to a party,
Yeah.
would have so much depth.
Yeah.
But it really does.
It's definitely not your typical love story.
No.
So this dogfight takes place in 1963 in San Francisco.
Okay.
And we meet Eddie Birdlace, who's played by River Phoenix.
Yeah.
He's this young Marine who's about to ship off to Vietnam.
Mhm.
And I feel like the film kind of throws you right into this world of like bravado and toxic masculinity.
Savoca doesn't shy away from it at all, does she?
Not at all.
Like the way that she frames those early scenes
Right.
with those tight shots of Marines' faces,
Yes.
all that swagger and braggadocio, you really get a sense of that pressure
Yes.
that they're under to conform. You know?
Totally. They're like bursting at the seams with all this nervous energy.
Mhm.
And this dogfight just seems like their way of kind of like blowing off steam before,
Yeah.
But it's obviously so dehumanizing to the women
Absolutely.
who are involved.
And that's where Rose comes in,
Yes.
played by Lili Taylor.
Right.
And she really flips the script.
She does.
She's this shy, kind of quirky waitress
Yeah.
who becomes Eddie's unsuspecting date.
Right.
But she's not a pushover at all.
Yeah.
She challenges him.
I love how she doesn't just like shrink back in shame.
Right.
She really stands up for herself.
Yeah.
But she does it in this quiet, dignified way.
Yes.
It's almost like she sees right through his like tough guy act.
She does. She does.
Yeah.
You see Phoenix's performance shift in those scenes too.
Oh, totally.
There's like, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes that wasn't there before. It's like he's starting to see her as an individual.
Yeah.
Not just, a pawn in this game.
Right. Yeah.
This cruel game.
It's interesting because even though, this film is set in the 60s, it feels so relevant, even today with this whole idea of, young men
Right.
who are trying to prove their masculinity through these rituals. It's
Sadly, not a thing of the past.
not at all. It's so relevant.
Yeah, and the way that Savoca uses the Vietnam War as this looming backdrop,
Yeah.
it adds another layer to it.
It does.
You can feel this tension, this sense of impending doom
Yes.
that's hanging over these young men.
Yeah.
It's like they're clinging to this toxic masculinity as a way to just cope with their fear.
It's almost like the dogfight itself
Yeah.
is like a microcosm of the war.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you've got this competition, this need to dominate,
Yeah.
this disregard for the other side's humanity.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty unsettling when you think about it that way.
It is, but then you have Rose,
Right.
who represents this glimmer of hope,
Yes.
this reminder
Yes.
that connection and empathy are possible.
She's like a breath of fresh air
Yes.
in this like stifling atmosphere.
Totally.
And the way that Savoca contrasts the harshness of the Marines world
Right.
with like the softness of Rose's world is so effective.
It is.
Like that scene where they go to the diner
Yeah.
and she reads him E. Cummings.
It's such a tender moment.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And the music in that scene,
Yeah.
Bob Dylan's Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, playing in the background.
Right.
Did that choice of song strike you as significant?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this melancholy to that song.
Yes.
This sense of resignation.
Yes.
It kind of foreshadows the
Bittersweet. Yeah.
the bittersweet nature of their relationship. Like Savoca is hinting at the fact that, their time together will be fleeting.
Yes.
But it's going to leave this lasting impact.
I get chills just thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how a single song can just add so much depth to a scene.
Music is so powerful.
It really is.
And Savoca, she uses it masterfully throughout the film
Yes.
to create atmosphere and evoke all this emotion.
Speaking of creating atmosphere.
Yeah.
Did you notice how she uses all those close-ups?
Yes.
To really emphasize the growing intimacy between Eddie and Rose.
The way that,
you really feel like you're right there with them, experiencing all their awkwardness.
Right.
And their laughter and their connection.
And the warm lighting.
Yes.
In those scenes.
Yeah.
It really adds to that intimacy.
It does. It's such a stark contrast to the, like, harsh fluorescent lighting of the barracks.
Exactly.
Savoca really knows how to use visuals to tell a story.
She does.
She does. And the film, it really makes you think about the impact of even these, like, fleeting connections can have on our lives.
It's a reminder that sometimes, the most transformative relationships aren't necessarily the ones that last forever.
Right.
It's about those moments of genuine connection.
Yes.
Seeing and being seen by another person.
Okay, so we've talked about the setup.
Right.
The characters, the setting, and all the incredible filmmaking techniques that Savoca uses to bring it all to life.
Right.
But there's still so much more to unpack.
There is.
Especially when it comes to Eddie's journey.
Yeah.
And the film's kind of broader themes.
We're really just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Of what Dogfight has to say about love, redemption, and the challenges of finding your own path.
Right.
In a world that's constantly trying to define you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
We were just talking about how Dogfight really highlights those fleeting connections and their impact. But let's maybe shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And really dig into Eddie's transformation throughout the film.
Okay.
I mean, he starts off as this, like, really cocky Marine, totally caught up in the toxic masculinity of that environment.
Right.
Did you pick up on that at all?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting how Savoca doesn't just make him, like, a caricature.
Right.
He's not just a villain.
Right.
You see these glimpses of vulnerability early on, even before he meets Rose.
Right, like when he's getting ready for the dogfight.
Yeah. And he's, like, looking at himself in the mirror. Yeah. There's this moment of hesitation, almost like he's not entirely comfortable with what he's about to do.
It's so subtle.
Yeah.
But it speaks volumes about Savoca's, like, attention to detail.
Right.
She's not telling a black and white story.
No.
She's showing us all the nuances of Eddie's character.
Right.
And that internal conflict that he's grappling with.
Yeah. And as he spends more time with Rose, like, those cracks in his tough guy facade, they just become more pronounced. He's clearly drawn to her genuineness, her passion for things like music and poetry.
Yeah.
It's like she opens up this whole new world for him.
It is. It's like she represents a different kind of masculinity.
Yeah.
One that's not based on aggression or dominance.
Right.
But on, like, sensitivity and empathy.
Yeah.
And you can really see him struggling with that. Yeah. Trying to, like, reconcile those two opposing forces within himself.
There's that scene where they're walking through San Francisco.
Yeah.
And Rose is pointing out all these, like, little details, that Eddie would normally just overlook. The way the light hits a building.
Yeah.
The sound of a street musician.
It's like she's teaching him to see the beauty in the everyday.
Totally. And he's kind of resisting at first, right?
He is. He's trying to hold on to that tough guy persona.
Right.
But you can tell, like, it's starting to slip away.
Yes.
He's so intrigued by her.
Yeah.
By her way of looking at the world.
Yeah, it's a gradual shift, It's not like this sudden epiphany.
Right.
It feels so much more realistic.
It does, because real change doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly. It's messy.
It is.
Complicated.
It's messy and complicated.
And I think that's one of the things that makes Dogfight so compelling.
I agree.
It's not, just this simplistic story about a bad boy who turns good.
Right. It's a much more nuanced exploration of personal growth.
Right.
With all of its its fits and starts.
Right.
Yeah.
There's that really powerful scene where they go back to her apartment after that, like, disastrous dogfight party.
Right.
And she's confronting him about his behavior. And for the first time, he really seems to understand the pain that he's caused her.
And how does Savoca visually represent that moment of understanding?
It's it's not through dialogue.
Right.
It's all in Phoenix's eyes.
Yes.
There's this look of shame, regret that just speaks volumes.
Yeah.
And then he reaches out to touch her face.
Yeah.
But he stops himself.
It's like he wants to comfort her.
Yes.
But he knows that he doesn't deserve to.
And that restraint,
right,
that awareness of his own unworthiness, it's huge.
It is.
It's such a big step forward for him.
It is. It's like he's starting to develop empathy.
Right.
To understand the consequences of his actions.
But then, he goes back to the barracks and he's back in that hypermasculine environment, surrounded by his buddies.
His buddies, yeah.
Who are all just bragging about their dogfight conquests.
It's that pull of conformity.
It is. It's so hard to break free from those ingrained patterns of behavior.
Right.
Especially when you're surrounded by people who are just reinforcing them.
Absolutely.
And Savoca doesn't let him off the hook.
No.
She shows us the struggle, the internal conflict. And I think that's what makes his eventual transformation, however incomplete, it feels earned.
So do you think that Eddie fully embraces this, newfound empathy?
That's a good question.
Or is there still a part of him that remains trapped in that toxic masculinity?
I think Savoca leaves it open to interpretation.
Okay.
There's hope there, but there's also this lingering uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the film so thought-provoking. It doesn't offer easy answers.
And it mirrors the uncertainty of the time period as well.
Right.
This is 1963.
Yeah.
Right on the cusp of America's, major involvement in Vietnam.
Right.
These young men are facing such an uncertain future.
They are.
And that uncertainty just seeps into every aspect of their lives.
It does.
Even their relationships.
It's like the Vietnam War hangs over the film like a shadow.
Yeah.
Even though it's never explicitly depicted.
Right.
And I think that just adds to that sense of foreboding, the feeling that things are about to change irrevocably.
That's a great point.
Some critics have argued that the film doesn't really adequately address the Vietnam War.
Right.
That it's too focused on Eddie and Rose's personal story. But I actually think that Savoca's choice to keep the war in the background is deliberate.
I think so, too.
I think it's much more powerful that way.
Yeah.
It's the war is this unseen force that's shaping their lives, even if they're not directly fighting in it.
Right.
And I think that just makes Eddie's transformation even more significant. He's choosing to embrace compassion and empathy in a world that's about to just be consumed by violence.
It's almost like he's making this conscious decision to resist all those dehumanizing forces that are at play.
Exactly. And that brings us to Rose.
Okay.
How do you think she factors into Eddie's transformation? It's not just a one-sided thing, is it?
It's definitely not.
Yeah.
She's not just this passive object in his story. She's an active agent in her own right.
She challenges him, she inspires him.
Yeah.
And she ultimately helps him to see himself more clearly.
She does.
I love how she doesn't let him get away with his glib explanations or his attempts to minimize his behavior.
Yeah.
She calls him out.
She does.
But she does it with this incredible mix of strength and vulnerability.
It's what makes her so compelling.
Yes.
As a character, she's not a saint.
Right.
She's not perfect.
Right.
But she's real.
Yes.
And her realness is what allows Eddie to see the humanity in her.
Yes.
And ultimately the humanity in himself.
So we've got this incredible dynamic between Eddie and Rose, this push and pull between his need to conform and her refusal to be defined by his expectations.
Yeah.
But then there's the ending.
Right.
And I think that's where the film really gets us thinking.
About the lasting impact of these fleeting connections. So we left off talking about Rose and how important she is in this film, but let's talk about that ending.
Okay.
Eddie leaves for Vietnam.
Right.
And it's just kind of left open-ended.
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? You want them to have more time to see if, their relationship could work out. But
right.
I don't know, that ambiguity almost feels true to life, doesn't it?
I think so.
I mean, not all stories have neat and tidy resolutions.
Exactly. And I think it really drives home the point that even the briefest encounters can really have a profound impact.
They can.
It's
true.
I mean, their connection might have been fleeting.
Yeah.
But it clearly changed them both.
You did.
In really significant ways.
And it makes you think about,
it does.
All those chance encounters we've had in our own lives.
All the people who crossed our paths.
Yeah.
Just for a short time, but left, an indelible mark.
It's true.
I think there's a real beauty.
Yeah.
In just acknowledging the power of those moments.
Yeah, and it's not just about romantic connections, right?
No, not at all.
It could be a teacher, a friend, even just a stranger who, says something kind at just the right moment.
Exactly.
Those seemingly small interactions can sometimes have the biggest impact.
I think Dogfight does such a good job.
It does.
Of capturing that, that truth about human connection.
It really does.
It's not always about grand gestures or epic love stories.
Yeah.
It's about those subtle shifts, those quiet moments of understanding that can just change the course of our lives.
If we're looking at this as more than a love story, what other themes do you think Savoca is exploring here? We've touched on the Vietnam War context a bit,
right?
But how do you think that plays into the film's overall message?
Well, I think the war serves as this constant reminder of the fragility of life and just the fleeting nature of youth.
Yes,
these young men. I mean, they're about to be thrust into this conflict, that's going to forever alter their lives.
Totally.
And the dogfight almost becomes this way,
right?
For them to numb themselves to that reality.
It's almost like a last-ditch effort to hold on to their innocence, even as they're being forced to confront the harsh
realities,
the war.
Yeah, right. And Rose kind of represents a kind of innocence too.
Yes, she's not jaded.
She's not jaded.
Or cynical, even though she's clearly been through a lot.
Yeah.
She still believes in beauty and love and connection.
That contrast is so striking.
It is.
You got this backdrop of war.
Right.
This impending sense of doom.
Yeah.
And then you have these two characters who are just finding solace.
Yes.
In each other's company.
However briefly.
Yeah, however briefly. And it's not just solace.
Right.
It's transformation.
Yes.
Eddie's interactions with Rose, they challenge his ideas about, women love himself.
Right.
He's starting to question the values.
Yeah.
He's been taught.
Yeah.
The definition of masculinity that's been imposed on him.
It's she creates this space for him.
Yeah.
To be vulnerable, to connect with his emotions in a way that he just
in a way that he hasn't been able to before.
He hasn't been able to before, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the real power of Dogfight. It's not just, a critique of toxic masculinity or a commentary on the horrors of war. I mean, it touches on those themes.
It does.
But ultimately, it's a story about the redemptive power of just
human connection.
Human connection, even in the face of, darkness and despair.
It's about finding those glimmers of hope in unexpected places and recognizing that even those fleeting moments of kindness and understanding can have a lasting impact.
They really can.
That was beautifully put.
Thank you.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to anyone listening who hasn't seen Dogfight, I highly recommend checking it out.
That's so good.
It's a powerful film with incredible performances and a message that will stay with you long after the credits roll.
I think it's a film that really deserves to be revisited and reexamined. And I have a feeling it will continue to speak to audiences for many years to come.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course.
On this deep dive into Dogfight.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed exploring this film with us.
It's been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure. And remember,
yes,
keep seeking out those moments of genuine connection. Those sparks of beauty and kindness that make life worth living.
They do.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic.
Sounds good.
Until then, keep exploring.
Yes.
Keep questioning.
Keep diving deep.
And keep diving deep.